Are they out of school already?
No, they don't get out till Wednesday.
Okay, that's okay. You know, in New York, they're in school next Friday.
Stay in school.
It's funny. That's funny. Well, now this is funny. Welcome, Aliane, to Champion Sports Mom Podcast. This is a hoot. I mean,
it's kind of crazy.
It is a little crazy. So, I mean, it goes out to a wide audience, and everyone starts with their athletic story, which, of course, I could tell. But since you are the guest today, why don't you tell us about your athletic background and story?
So it is kind of crazy that I'm talking to you as a mom now instead of as an athlete. So my athletic background begins with Wendy Hilliard and rhythmic gymnastics. I started rhythmic actually pretty late considering everything, but I had done ballet before. So I started rhythmic with Wendy at UNIS, the United Nations School, when I was 10. And quickly fell in love with it because it combined dance and athleticism and competitiveness and all of those incredible things that I loved. And then went on to compete in the 1996 Olympics for group and World Championships, Pan American Games. And then after that, became a professional dancer and danced on Broadway and in film and TV and with musical artists. And you probably tell it better than I do.
Yeah, that's funny. No, it's really interesting because you followed so much about what I did in my career, right? Like after I retired, I performed a lot. I was in New York. I did Broadway. I performed. I remember you coming to performances like Radio City Music Hall and all that craziness. So it's so wild in a way, right? That we still have these pillars. Oh, I only did one Broadway show, and you did what, like 3 or 4?
Yeah, but you were always such a champion about it. Like I remember talking to my mom and being like, I went to college for a semester and I was like, I want to leave. I want to go dance. And she's like, no, you need to go to school. And you're like, but it's her dream. Let her do it.
Uh-oh.
And it worked out. So
that was funny. Well, it's as we're talking about this and your mom, because we'll have to do another one with your mom because she has such good, for me as a coach, it was really important, right? And so she, the thing that she'd understand is that I knew that you were such a high level. When you went to college, they were not dancing at the high level like you were training. So it was kind of not fulfilling, right? So
yeah, it was interesting because after Olympics was in August and I went straight to college at the end of August and everyone had been telling me to take time off and take a year off. Like you've been training so intensely for a long time, you don't necessarily want to just go to college right away. And I was like, no, I want to go. I want to be, quote unquote normal, whatever that means, and go to college. And it was not what I wanted in the end. It was not right for me at the time. So
my goodness. So yeah, so she went on and had this great career performing everywhere, TV, Broadway, live, things like that. And then, so I'm traveling someplace. So Christopher Harrison, yeah. So, she's performing also with Anti-Gravity. Christopher Harrison, Anti-Gravity is this wonderful gymnastics dance company that I started with, and then she performed. And Christopher Harrison, who's the chair of my board, started it, ran it. So I get a phone call. I swear I was on a plane or something. So Christopher's like, Aliane has something to tell you. And so I was like, I'm just here to prepare you. So I'm like, okay. And so I can't remember if I called you or you called me. You're like, Wendy, I got married. I was like, yeah. So you got to tell everybody that little story too.
So after every Olympics, they do a post-Olympic gymnastics tour. And I had been on one in 96. And that's actually what got me to start loving performing. It was the first time I got to perform and not compete. And I was like, wow, I really like this. So that was sort of the start of my, I would say, performance career after gymnastics. And then I was asked to come back in 2008, which mind you was like many years later. And I was probably too old to be doing a gymnastics tour. But this time I got to help choreograph and everything. So it was really fun. And 3 weeks into the tour, I had already met him. I would say we rekindled Blaine Wilson, we eloped 3 weeks into the tour. And called everyone and said, I got married.
Yeah, they eloped. no preparation, no, what do you think, Wendy? And she tells me, she's like, I was scared to tell you. I told Chris I to prepare. And it was pretty funny because it was shocking. It was shocking. And yeah, you go off on tour and you zip off. Now, and again, to the audience, Blaine Wilson is a 3-time Olympian, right?
3-time Olympian, Olympic silver medalist, 5-time national champion.
Yeah, he's a rock star gymnast, right? So that's the starting point. Not all families start with 2 Olympic athletes in the same sport, even though, Aliane's rhythmic and he's artistic. But that's the starting point. So after we got over that shock and we left Blaine, after I looked him up and down the first time I saw him, I'm like, yo. So then she goes on, right? She has a bonus daughter to start with, right?
Yep.
And then she has 2 boys. Yes. And that's what we're going to talk about, because she got 2 athletes, but 2 different.
Very different. Very different. So when we got married, we were on tour with Nastia Lukin and Sean Johnson and everyone, and everyone's like, you guys are going to create a Nastia. Like, her mom was a rhythmic gymnast, her dad was an artistic gymnast, and we were like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, and then we have 2 boys.
That's funny. Right. But now you have seriously, a very serious athlete, right?
Yes, they are both completely different and have taken they're still young, they're 10 and 13, but up until this point have taken really different paths as far as their athletic, I don't want to say careers at 10 years old, but as far as their journeys, right? My oldest son, Jackson, who's 13, has literally been in the gym since he was born. I mean, I was coaching rhythmic. We set a playpen, not even a playpen, donut mats around him so the clubs wouldn't hit him. I mean, he's grown up in the gym. And from a really young age, just loved it. He likes the structure. He likes all of it. He likes training hard. I think he had to compete trampoline and tumbling because he was too young to compete boys gymnastics at first. So he did that when he was 3 and 4 and 5 until he was old enough. So now he's a level 9 junior elite, male gymnast, and hoping to eventually make national team and go to compete at college one day and Olympics eventually.
Now, does he say that? That's really interesting. I mean, I know you guys are both theaters around it, but does he say that?
He says he wants to, I said, whenever anybody asks him what his goal is, he says he wants to beat his dad. And wow. I'm like, well, that's a tall order, because that means either 4 Olympics or a gold medal at Olympics or 6 national championships. So I don't know. We try to really focus just on things that he can control and not necessarily anything that has to do with Blaine. I would say one of the hardest things for him to deal with, especially now as he gets older, is that he's recognizing what his dad did in the sport, and he's recognizing sort of the name that he has. And a lot of the times now he starts going to regional camps or national camps, and it's like, oh, this is Blaine's kid, this is Wilson, this is, oh, you got your dad's flexibility, or you swing better horse than your dad. And he has a pretty good head on his shoulders about it all. He'll be like, no, I'm Jackson. And,
That's interesting. Yeah, now he's getting into that. But also, he also does other sports. Or is he still doing other sports?
He still does. Yeah, he does travel baseball also.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a lot, and it's a huge commitment. But I mean, both sports are a big commitment. And we're lucky enough to have found a coach that really understands, well, both coaches, both baseball and gymnastics, understands how important they both are to him. And I think being well-rounded that way has helped him also. And the baseball coach is very understanding, saying through nationals, gymnastics comes first. And then once nationals is over, baseball comes first.
Gotcha. So talk about that conversation with the coaches, because I think this is really important for their parents to know that's a navigation.
It's definitely really hard, and you have to find the right coach. I mean, this is our 3rd baseball team because the other coaches weren't necessarily as understanding, or it just wasn't the right fit. And so it's definitely something that when we were looking for a team, it was the very first thing we said. We said, just so you know, he's a very serious gymnast. He trains all year long. Nationals isn't until May at this age. And baseball nowadays, I mean, they start practices twice a week starting in January. Wow. and then like for indoor, and then they start playing, I would say March, April.
In Ohio? It's so cold outside. What do you mean?
Yeah, it's cold. I don't want to go play in March or April. So it's definitely something that we're very upfront about from the beginning. And we understand as parents too, like he's not going to make the twice a week practices January, February, March, because it's full on competition gymnastics season. And so if that means he sits at a baseball game for the first few months till then fine. We understand that. Like I'm not expecting him, to start every game, to be the start pitcher, to be whatever number batter. It's just a balance that we're willing to take and the coach is willing to take also.
That's good. And then how did it work with his gymnastics coach?
So they're great about it also. I mean, the good thing, I guess, for baseball is most of the season, I would say, is April through July. And so really like April, May is what's hardest. And I think the first couple years I was really trying to balance both of them as far as making sure he gets to both. But now as he gets older, it's like, okay, gymnastics through nationals. Like if your goal is to make national team, you can't be going to baseball 3 days a week in April. And once school is out, then we tend to practice gymnastics in the mornings and baseball in the afternoon. So it works out. It's really just like April and May is hard.
That's a lot though. That's a big juggle, right?
It is. It is.
And so how does he have a favorite, or he just likes going between the two?
He likes competing. So he likes whatever is in season.
Wow.
If he is at the height of baseball season, he's all into baseball. The height of gymnastics season, he's all into gymnastics.
That's interesting because a lot of people need to understand, especially in sports, especially like gymnastics, where you start young and it is a year-round training, the importance of doing other sports. Because Blaine also did other sports. I don't think people realize that, right?
Yeah, Blaine played soccer and baseball until high school. I think he quit soccer before, or one of them he quit a little bit earlier, but he did. And we talk about this all the time. I feel like multi-sport athletes are so important, and I feel like we're getting away from that a little bit with everybody feeling like you have to focus or specialize at such a young age. I remember being at nationals 2 years ago with Jackson saying, oh yeah, when we get back, we have a baseball tournament, and this mom turned around and looked at me and she's like, he's allowed to play baseball? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, yeah. We're going skiing in a couple weeks.
And that's a big one. Wow.
I know. You didn't allow me to go skiing.
I didn't allow you to go skiing. And my coaches didn't allow me to go skiing because somebody came home with the knee that needed some help. But yeah.
I know. So Blaine was never allowed to ski. So he went for the first time 3 years ago. And, it's hard to learn in your 40s.
It is. But look at the gymnastics career he had.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, that's very interesting. So it's quite the juggle, and on your end, right? And you know, the thing is about this, and people like to hear other parents, if they weren't athletes, that it's a juggle, that you have to communicate with the coaches. It's a lot back and forth, and that multi-sport is, especially with your family. And you're a family of gymnasts. So if you really believe in multi-sport, because you do, you've excelled at sports that are not necessarily that way. And another thing I think that we need to add to it. So we have Jackson, who's a serious gymnast and baseball player and serious instructor. And yeah. And then you got Bodie.
Who is completely different. Like Jackson was in the gym, like I said, like, follows everything the way you're supposed to. And Bodie, we were like, what is this child going to do? Like, he's absolutely out of control, insane, doesn't want any structure, wants to run free, tried a little bit of everything, wanted to play hockey, wanted to play football, wanted to play this, wanted to do that. And, we tried everything because I'm like, go find your passion, go find what you want to do. And then he found soccer, and he is all in. Like, I mean, the kid wants to play every single day, multiple times a day. He's on a travel soccer team. He does 3 days a week of extra soccer training. Then he does like indoor if he's been asked to guest play, so he does indoor and this and that, and he says yes to all of it. He absolutely loves it. And he also plays travel baseball.
He does. That's right. He does too. Wow. That's a lot. So how do you manage all this, Mom? That's a lot of especially the travel part, right?
I try to have really good friends on the teams that like pick them up and drive them. And I mean, I've sent them both on their own to tournaments, and I've had to send them with other families. I've had to have, grandpa take them, or sometimes they'll just go with another family who's going and I'll pick them up. I mean, it's a big puzzle trying to figure it all out. But I've said to them, I said, listen, if you work hard and if this is what you want to do, then I will do whatever I can to help you out on my end. Like, I'll help facilitate it. But if it gets to a point where it's like, I mean, it's already gotten to that point where it's a little too much.
That's funny. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of juggling. So tell me, as a mom of athletes that are in different sports than you, like baseball and soccer, how do you approach being the parent of the child in a sport that you were not familiar with?
So it's interesting. Actually, I was just having this conversation with a couple people because we're getting to a point now in gymnastics where there's a lot of mental issues, like not issues, there's a lot of mental aspects that are coming up that didn't come up before, right? So it's skills are getting harder, skills are getting bigger. There's a little bit of fear that's coming into play that has never been there before for him. And knowing what we know about gymnastics is great and we can be helpful, but at the same time, he's a teenage boy who thinks his parents don't know anything about anything. So it's like very hard to navigate sometimes that way. And I was just saying, I feel like my mom did it best because she knew nothing. She knew nothing about it. And I would come home and be like, I did toss double illusion trap. And she's like, it's Japanese to me. I have no idea what you're talking about. But great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas sometimes he comes home and we have to be careful, but sometimes we're like, that's great, but like your form was a mess. Like you're not going to get credit for that. So there's that with something so well. And then with soccer, for example, I don't know all of the ins and outs of it. I don't know how you're supposed to kick a ball. I'm like, yeah, it looks like you did a great job. Like you assisted, you had a goal, like great job. You played hard. So it's kind of like ignorance is bliss sometimes on that side of it.
And for the kids as well, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, because oftentimes I run against parents who want to know more and be all up in there. And I was just like, I don't know if that's always really the best thing.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's not, I'll get you there. I'll, make sure you have the right uniform and go play, go have fun, run around.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, we'll do another one with your mom. It was pretty funny. She was... she didn't, but also, I mean, and you have to talk about this as an age, because were you 14 when you moved away from home?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a big decision. So tell me about how you felt of it as an athlete. Like when we asked your mom, because let's say in a year, Jackson's like,
no, I know. We talked about this, and I'm like, no, he's not going anywhere. There's no way.
Like, I want to play with the team in Florida.
He's like, well, I think he would have to move. And I'm like, no. But as an athlete, honestly, it never crossed my mind not to go. I didn't even think it was an option not to go. I was like, if I make this team that's going to be moving, then I'm going. I never even thought for a second I wouldn't go. Like, I'm sure my mom did. I've never asked her.
But in your head, you were ready to go.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for that phone call. My bags were packed. I was ready to go.
That is so interesting. And I think people don't realize that when you see it from the outside, right? Because they always worry about missing so much. Because you did get to train schools. You're in a different city. It was like live with other people. It was a lot.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't even think of it. Like everyone's like, I can't believe your mom let you go. I'm like, she didn't really have a choice. I mean, she had a choice, obviously. She could have said no, but not really. Like
you're gone.
I was gone, But if I even mention it to Jackson, for example, and I think maybe it was a little different because we were training group. So we knew that and we knew the U.S. was qualified. We knew what we were training for. We knew we were going to Olympics, at least like 95%. Whereas now, if I said to Jackson, hey, I think it's time to take the next step and you should move to whatever, go train. There's no, it's just to train, right? It's not like you're training for Olympics or for this. And I think with the men, it's different because they don't peak until later, until
Right.
college. So, I mean, hopefully he doesn't have to go anywhere until college.
Yeah, sometimes kids gotta go. Kids gotta go. And how was it of being with two boys, kind of in one same sport, but two other sports? How are they with each other as far as navigating that
So,
part?
they're great. And one of the reasons Bodie was never going to be a gymnast, I mean, period. But one of the reasons we sort of steered him towards soccer was because Jackson didn't do it. And they're already so competitive in nature that I was like, it would be so great if you each had your own thing that you can excel at. And it's been really nice. Like Bodie will come to his competitions, Jackson will come to Bodie's games, and they're very supportive of each other and very proud of each other with those things. And then baseball, they're different ages. So like Bodie just did kid pitch for the first time, and Jackson's been in it, so they're not really competitive with baseball yet. And I would say their baseball coaches would kill me for saying this, but I would say baseball is a secondary sport for both of them.
Interesting. Yeah. That's interesting. But they still like having it because I think it's important to have kind of seasons or a little bit of off time.
Yeah.
Which you don't get in gymnastics much.
You don't get it at all. I mean, you really don't. There's no downtime. There's no off season. I remember reading this article during COVID where it was a doctor, a PT guy was saying how important it was. And people didn't lose that much in those few months that they didn't train. They really didn't. And that we should take that to heart and maybe look at that going forward and have a little bit of an off season, or, maybe not 3 months, but.
Right. Because, I mean, the reality of it is, and you have to look at each sport. Gymnastics is just one of those things. You're off for 2 weeks and you're already losing your strength. I mean, it just flexibility, this or that. And the other thing that was interesting about men's gymnastics, as I found out, is that they have to spend so much time getting strong. Like you said, Jackson's just now getting to the bigger tricks and things like that, where female athletes would have been doing it probably 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. But the guys just have to get stronger, like a lot of conditioning.
Yeah, and a lot of that doesn't come until puberty. And for example, they don't have this in women's gymnastics. You can be, however old and be level 10, let's say. For men, they actually have a minimum age so that you're not trying to do these harder skills when you don't have the physicality to do them.
Right.
So even some of the stuff on rings, there's no way he's anywhere near doing some of these strength moves, and he won't be until college. So yeah, it's interesting having the two different sports and seeing it. Bodie, soccer's not going to change between now and 18. He'll get bigger, but the technique,
Right. They have to work a lot of technique, though. I mean, soccer's getting better,
Yeah. That kid would go to an academy tomorrow if you asked him.
Oh, really? He would?
Oh, yeah.
See you later.
I'm going to Barcelona. Bye, Mom.
That's funny. Yeah, it's knowing your kids. And how much do you talk to them really one-on-one about sports? Do you?
We do. Usually it's I would say it's usually talking about after a game or a practice, how was it? And they're pretty good about not just being it was good. They'll tell us what they worked on. They'll tell us whatever, for soccer, be today we worked on one-on-one defending, and I feel like my defending's getting better, but they're pretty vocal about it. And then Jackson will usually run down, well, we started on pommel horse, we did halves, I hit this, I hit that, I missed this, I did it,
That's funny. But that's good that you guys have that communication. So coming from a family of jocks, like you guys seriously are, what advice would you give other families that maybe don't have this background, right? And they have kids that they want to navigate through the sports?
I think my biggest advice would be to let the kid lead. Let the kid take the lead. They are pretty honest about what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And I think sometimes parents tend to, I don't want to say force, but guide them towards what the parents think they should do. And I'm still learning that, to listen to my kids too. I mean, there are days that they pretty much always want to go to practice, but there are days where Jackson will say, Mom, I'm just tired. And before I'd be like, go to practice, you'll be fine. What if you're tired at the Olympics? What if you're tired at nationals, right? But at the same time, I'm like, this kid is practicing 20 hours a week. He's in full-time school. He's in baseball. Like, if he tells me he's tired, practice might not be that productive. Like, it might be more productive for him to just stay home and chill. So I'm still learning, but I think it's really important to just listen to your kids and let them take the lead.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one. And then, have there been anything so far that was your biggest challenge? It may be traveling, but what's been your biggest challenge with the kids? Like something that came across, you're like, whoa.
I think we're in it right now with Jackson, I would say. Where, like I said, we're at a point where there's one skill that's giving him a lot of trouble, and he's got this mental block, and he's like, well, you don't understand. You were never scared of it. I was like, Jackson, I got hit in the head with a club so many times. He's like, yeah, but this and Dad was never scared, and Dad just threw skills. He didn't care. Like Jackson's way more analytical than Blaine was as a gymnast, and so it's figuring out how to help him through that. Which is not necessarily the same way that I got through it or that Blaine got through it, but figuring out what works for him. So we're actually speaking to a sports psychologist tomorrow morning. Just because I was like, these are the tools that worked for me. These are the tools that worked for your dad. If none of those work, let's find some more tools for you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Because I also think that the mental aspect is so important in all sports, actually. And it really is. And then also, this pandemic was, no matter what it was, I think it really affected kids a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was really hard. And I'm noticing that a lot of these kids that are in middle school now, it's like these formative years, and they had a couple of years that were really wonky. And now it's, well, what if this? What if this? What if this? And I'm like, you have to live your life now. I mean, you can't wonder what if all the time. But they had to for a while. So I think that's ingrained in them.
Yeah.
And like another thing we talk about with Bodie is for a couple years, his soccer team, they're really good, and they would make it to the finals all the time and then lose in the finals. And I remember this one drive home with Bodie. I said, why do you think you guys always make it to the finals but can never win the final? And he said, well, I think we're scared of making mistakes in the final. And he was, 8, I think, when he said this, 8 or 9. And I was like, what? Okay. I was like, all right, well, next time you get to a final, don't be afraid to make mistakes. You're going to make a mistake. At least in soccer, you can make a mistake and lose the ball and then try to get it back, So it's interesting to hear, they know they might not be able to verbalize, we're playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. But he's like, well, I'm scared to make a mistake. And so I think knowing what I know, actually, I remember you told me this was my first nationals or classics. I can't remember what it was at Olympic Training Center. And I think going into the second day, I was I don't remember. I was first or second or something. And it was and then I totally messed up the second day because you're trying to stay there as opposed to fighting to get on top. And so it was a good lesson for me to be able to pass on to him. You can't play not to lose. You can't worry about keeping first place. You just have to go out there and play.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do it. And it's hard because once you go through that and you learn it, because I had already gone through it. That's why I could tell you, you just got to keep it. Playing it safe doesn't get you there. Rarely.
Well, and I wish you never let us look at our scores. I mean, listen, back then we had to go out in the hallway, look at the handwritten scores on the thing, and I was never allowed to look at them, which I hated at the time. But now I realize how great it was. But now you can't avoid it. Yeah. I mean, they flash it. There's apps. There's they're everywhere.
Right. Yeah, I tell not to focus on that because that's kind of out of your hands. Yeah,
right.
Once they do it, that's interesting. It's so nice you remember all these things from back in the day. My boo face.
You were a huge influence. Of course I do.
Yeah. So if anybody ever, I can see a lot of things when you were not facing me and not happy.
Oh yeah, I used to turn my back and roll my eyes, and she'd go, "Why are you rolling your eyes at me?" I was like, "How do you know?"
Yep. Those things we know, as you see, and you're probably figuring out as a mom because you can tell a lot of things, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'll be like, not with that attitude. What attitude? All those things. But like, and I would say another thing, sorry, this just came to my mind, that I would say to parents is that make sure the goals that the kids set, again, not the parents, that the kids would set, would be ones that are in their control. So not ones that have to do with anybody else, but something that they have the control over and they're accountable for. So you can't, like Jackson always like, well, I want to win the meet. I'm like, that's not up to you. Like, you can want to hit your routine. You can want to do a new difficulty. You can want to stick a dismount. You can want to, whatever. But like, you have no control over the judges. You have no control over the other competitors. Like, so I would just make sure that the goals that are set are ones that are, ones that the child has control over.
That's good. That is very good, because it happens a lot. And it's a journey, I'm sure. This has been too fun. I mean, seriously. we did laugh a lot. We're doing it, but when I see you with your kids and I see everything that they're doing, I was like, yo. And everybody was right. And so this is 20. You guys got married in 2008. That's so funny. Yeah, it's amazing. So from that crazy phone call, we got two more athletes, and you had 2 boys, which is so wild, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, following in my footsteps, but it's been good. But it's been really great. So, are there any other words of wisdoms or things? I think you've given everybody some really good advice, though.
Well, thank you. At first, when I came, I was like, I don't know. I'm in the middle of it. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think we ever really fully think we know what we're doing. But I think just open communication with the kids, and I don't know, when I have the answers, I'll let you know.
But you are. But I think what's really important for us too is we have to have all different levels. At this stage, it's really important. There are lots of parents who are in this stage, because what happens is you can honestly say, I'm going through this now. And that can have one parent that might not identify that this is an issue, because you're in the middle. So I'm not, after they do their thing or right where they start, it's all a journey. And you're going through it, girlfriend. Wish you the best of luck. But it's been such a joy to have you on the podcast. Lots of love.
Thanks for having me. It's so fun.
Yes. Thanks, Aliane.